First of all, I would just wanted to say thank you to everyone who is here. I know it's been a very long day, but it's been so incredible, and it's just exciting to look out and see everyone here, and also slightly intimidating and nerve-wracking. Because I will honestly say this is probably one of the most difficult presentations I've ever had to write, because I'm used to talking about my work, not about myself. And so that was intimidating, especially when I thought to myself, when I looked at the list of speakers and saw all of these incredible women who I've admired and looked up to for so long, and I knew they were going to be out there listening. So I'm really honored to be here. I wanted to just thank Marcia for all of her wonderful work with travel arrangements. And of course, I really wanted to say thank you to Deborah, to Dr. White, who was not only my advisor when I was here as a graduate student, but who has just, whose work has inspired me for a long time. And the impact of telling histories. I read it again on the plane yesterday, so I just wanted to say thank you to all the women who contributed to that, because you've really opened up a space for us to talk about a lot of things, so thank you. So I finished my PhD here at Rutgers in 2004, and in 2005, my husband and I moved to Bloomington, Indiana, and I took a position as an assistant professor at Indiana University, and that is where I still am. I'm going to start my story in the May of 2007, however, so that's the end of my second year. And that spring, I really felt like my life couldn't be any better. I had just finished my second year at IU. My student evaluations had actually been really good, which was a gift. It was wonderful. And my husband and I had just returned from my dream vacation, which we had delayed. It was my congratulations on your PhD trip, but it had been delayed a few years for a number of reasons, and we spent 3 weeks in Greece. And so I came back from Greece, and I was on top of the world, because what lay ahead of me was an entire year's paid leave to finish my book. And I was so excited, because I had been teaching full-time at that point for 6 years without a break, 3 of those years while simultaneously writing the dissertation. And now I was finally going to have time to get the book done, and I felt so encouraged. I was going to come back to campus in September of 2008 knowing that the book was done. The third-year review would just be a formality, because UNC Press, which had already expressed interest in the book, would have it. Everything would be great. The only thing I had to do before starting to get down to writing the rest of this book was to give a paper at a conference in Brazil in early June, and that was when my whole world changed. I became very, very ill in Brazil, and I spent the entire 10 days that I was there in misery. My whole body was swollen as if I was toxemic. The doctors never discovered what had caused this to happen. And even after I came back home to the States, it took weeks before I looked or felt normal again. And then just as I felt normal again, that was when headaches began. Headaches like I had never experienced in my life. Debilitating headaches that left me unable to sit upright or stand for more than 20 minutes at a time, because they were of such severe pressure and intensity, and accompanied by heat pouring out the top of my head. I couldn't function. No medication touched the pain. So I'll spare you the details of my medical merry-go-round. I'll just give you the bare facts. I'm still in the midst of this health crisis. I've had a headache, whether big or small, every day for almost 2 years now. On a good day, I can function despite the pain. On a bad day, I am completely incapacitated. I spent the entire summer of 2007, July and August, bedridden, 8 weeks from the pain. The most frustrating part of all of this is that to this day I still don't have a definite diagnosis. Last month I finally saw a specialist in Chicago who thinks he might know what the problem is, but we're going to have to play the wait and see game. So, having lost that entire summer, I went to see my faculty mentor and the chair of my department that September of 2007. I wanted to apprise them of my situation. I wanted to learn what I could do if the headaches continued. I didn't want to spend my leave being sick and unable to work, and then return to teaching in 2008 with the manuscript still unfinished. And both my mentor and my chair were very, very sympathetic. They told me I could take medical leave, which would stop my tenure clock. I could then take my research leave at a future date. This seemed like the ideal situation until I discovered that medical leave meant severely reduced pay. And that was a problem. It was a problem for a very simple reason. My husband had gone back to school. He only worked part-time. But even when he had worked full-time, I was the primary income earner in my household. If I went on medical leave, we literally would not be able to meet our monthly financial requirements. So faced with the prospect of having to sell our home and move, I decided not to take medical leave. I hoped with each new day I would wake up hoping and praying that this would be the day that the headaches would be gone and would never come back. And I struggled the entire winter of 2007, 2008, trying to write on my good days, which were very few and far between. And as I approached the 1-year anniversary of my illness, my worst fears were realized. My leave was coming to an end, and I had accomplished very little. Additionally, my illness had placed a real strain on my marriage. My husband never knew what shape I was going to be in when he came home, or what mood for that matter. Many of the medications I was being prescribed had severe side effects, including irritability. And that's really being polite. He now laughingly refers to it as the period where my wife turned into Ms. Hyde. Because it was just that bad. He was already overwhelmed. He was taking 4 classes. He was working 20 hours a week, trying to care for me, trying to care for our home. And it didn't help when I lost my temper over things that made no sense, like the price of Gatorade. I really did. It was just that crazy. To top it all off, there I was in August of 2008, realizing that I was going to have to go back into the classroom in just a few weeks. How was I going to teach? How was I going to get up and be able to just go to school and function? And to top it all off, I had somehow been convinced to teach 2 brand new preps that semester at the same time, because other people were taking leave and senior professors had shifted their schedules around, and so I ended up not with 1 new prep but 2 new preps in the same semester when I was still physically very, very unwell. And I somehow managed to teach those courses, but at a great cost to both my health, my sanity, and the book. Every single week in between headaches that laid me out, I read what I needed to read for my classes, I wrote new lectures, I created new PowerPoint presentations, I graded an unending flood of papers, I met with students, I attended all my committee meetings, and I continued to go to many, many, many doctor's appointments. I also strove to cook, to clean, to uphold all of my church obligations, and run errands. There was very little time for rest, less for my spouse, and none for me or the book. By Christmas, just a few months ago, I was completely falling apart. I spent the entire winter break working on my 3rd-year review materials, and I realized with a sinking heart that I was much further behind than I had realized. I was so overwhelmed by anxiety, I made an appointment to see my neurologist in January, and I begged him to send me to a specialized clinic, which I had been asking for almost 2 years. And he finally agreed that he would send me to a specialist in Chicago. So I met with my chair again, and I said, here's what's going on. I'm still sick. I'm going to be seeing a specialist in Chicago. Now, he was very sympathetic. That has been a real blessing for me. He was very sympathetic. But I thought it was interesting when he said that he had no idea that I was still that ill because, quote, you're always so cheerful and appear to handle all of your obligations so effortlessly. He then proceeded to say, your health has to come first. And he emphasized this time, take medical leave. Even if I took 1 semester off, it would buy me back 1 year on my tenure clock. He suspected that that would relieve a lot of the pressure that I was feeling, which couldn't have helped my headaches, I'm sure. Now, speaking with him really helped me a lot. I was finally ready to admit that I needed to focus on getting well. And then the book, which meant taking medical leave. Core part of the reason that I was actually willing to consider leave now, even though it was going to be financially difficult, is that for the last 1.5 years since I got sick, my husband and I started setting money aside every month under the assumption that I might have to take medical leave, and that way we would have some money saved up to carry us through if I needed to do this. So if we didn't need it, that would be great, but if we had it, we would have, and if we needed it, we would have it. So why am I telling you my drama about my health issues? Well, because I want to talk about the things that I've learned from it, the mistakes I made, the things I did right. Even if you never have a health crisis, life happens, like Dr. Wright said. Life happens. You can have a miscarriage. You can have a death in your family. You can be caring for an elderly parent or another member of your family. All of these things can happen to all of us every single day. I had no idea that I would ever end up in the middle of a health crisis when I was only in my 30s. And here I was in this position. So some of these things I did well, the others not so much, but I share them with you as part of my learning process. First things, to keep open communication with your chairperson and your faculty mentors. Keep them apprised of your circumstances. People cannot help you if they don't know there's a problem. So keep those who need to know in the know. Very important. 2, create a paper trail. You all know why I'm saying create a paper trail. You document any relevant life issues and struggles that have affected your ability to be a productive teacher, researcher, and scholar. Make sure that these are included in your annual reports to your department. Keep track of all of your appointments, your tests, your whatever. You know, as academics, we are trained, as historians, we are trained to cite everything. So carry that behavior into your personal life when the personal impacts the professional. This way, there may be fewer people who accuse you of being a slacker when you are not appearing to meet your deadlines and goals. 3, as I learned, set aside money every month so that you have an emergency fund to fall back on when life throws you a curveball. Because it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. No matter how young you are, you have no idea what can happen. 4, take leave if you need it. This was my mistake. Even if it's financially difficult in the short term, I stayed on research leave because I was worried about having to sell my house. In the long run, my health is more important than my house. Not only that, if I was denied tenure, I'd have to sell my house anyway. See, I'm a little thick. Sometimes God has to hit me over the head with a 2x4 a few times before it sinks in, you know. 5, never teach 2 new preps in the same semester. Even if you're healthy, because it's just crazy. I said yes, I felt like I couldn't say no, but at the same time, I also had unreasonable expectations for myself. I placed so much emphasis on being a good teacher, a great teacher, that I refused to accept that being an excellent teacher would not mean a thing at a Research 1 institution if I did not have my book done when I went up for tenure. That doesn't mean that I should have neglected my teaching, just that I needed to care a little bit more about my health, my sanity, and my long-term career goals than about the short term and about these classes I was teaching. 6, service obligations. Well, first, know what service is important, like serving on search committees, which is very important. And say yes to those things, but maybe you can say therefore you can say no to some other things that may not be quite as important, so that you don't have to run the history club and MC every, women's or, black person's event on campus or some such other things. So, knowing when to say no or stepping down from service obligations when necessary. When I told my chair in January, just a few months ago, that I was going to go to Chicago to see this specialist, he was very supportive, but never once did he offer to reassign my service duties to somebody else. So, as I was preparing to go to Chicago and teaching and everything else, I still had to spend 4 entire days reading 103 graduate admission application files. I then had to attend a 3-hour meeting to rank all those applications and still teach my classes. The day before my appointment in Chicago, instead of packing and getting ready to drive to Chicago, which is 4 hours away, I was told that I had to attend a meeting where a vote was going to take place on these graduate rankings. That meant that I couldn't leave home until 6 o'clock in the evening to make the 4-hour drive to Chicago. So when we finally did leave Bloomington, I worked on my laptop the entire way to Chicago while my husband drove, because I was having to prepare for the next week's classes, because I was going to have to go back right into the classroom when I came back. The very next morning, I was up bright and early and off to see the specialist, and I was there almost the entire day. It was a very, very long day. And when I came back to the hotel room, I was prepping again. I did the same thing all the way home in the car while my husband drove. So when I got home, my classes were prepped and ready to go, but I was exhausted and on the verge of a nervous breakdown. This again, big mistake. I should have asked my chair immediately to replace me on that graduate admissions committee. Instead, I felt that I had to keep up with my obligations. And part of this stemmed from my desire to not be a burden, to be liked, to prove that I was, a good citizen of the department, a good girl. The other part of it was pride. See, over the years, I have pretty much, I think many of us have perfected the art of the juggling act, which is why I titled my presentation, Juggernauts and Juggling Acts, Tales from the Tenure Track. I've pretty much been able to handle most things that come my way. I'm organized, I'm hardworking, I'm self-disciplined, I'm goal-oriented, and I don't give up. But I'm also stubborn. I'm unwilling to admit that I can't do it all and that I need help. Partly because I had a mom who really did do everything. She was amazing, the first one up and the last one to go to bed, and full-time job, and still did everything at home because my father did not do anything. So this is why I didn't step back from my obligations at work or lay aside any of my volunteer commitments when I got sick. I was foolishly trying to prove to somebody, I guess myself, that I was tougher than these headaches and they weren't going to get the best of me. Note to self, I wrote here, you are not Superwoman. 7, create a support network. You've heard this several times today, but it's that important that I'm just going to say it again. Surround yourself with sisters in the spirit from across the campus, across the profession, at your house of worship, within your family, through your volunteer groups, whatever. Create a support system. The kind of work that we are called to do in the academy is extremely isolating, particularly for historians. We spend most of our time alone, whether it's reading books, doing research in the archives, or writing. The thing is, it is really not good for us to be alone, or at least not that much. We need people in our lives who we can go to for encouragement, for accountability, for support, people who will let us vent when we need to, who will advise us when required, whether in person, over the phone, or via email. And I will just reiterate that 2 of my support network are sitting up here with me today. This is one of the reasons I got through graduate school. And we're still helping each other get through via email and telephone calls. And I'm very, very fortunate to have these 2 women in my life. 8, ask for help. Whether it's from friends, from colleagues, your spouse, ask for help and accept it when it is offered. Do not be too proud to accept it when it is offered, whether it's somebody being willing to come and clean your house for you or make you a meal or whatever the case might be. And learning to let stuff go. Like, I have dust bunnies like this big underneath my couch, and I just really, at this point, I just can't be bothered because I'm too sick to care about it at this point. And I told my husband, if you want to sweep up those dust bunnies, be my guest, but I don't have time right now. 9, and this is a piece of advice that I got many years ago from Dr. Nell Painter. Take time to celebrate the milestones in your life. We are so often thinking ahead already to the next hurdle and the next obstacle that we forget to enjoy what we have just achieved in the moment, whether that is being ABD, passing comp exams, defending your dissertation, getting the book contract, whatever. She said to me, take time to celebrate. Take time to celebrate. That's why. She said, because nobody else will take time to celebrate for you. And she was right. 10, invest time in your relationships. Love your family, love your friends, love your partners. At the end of the day, I have been reminded yet again that it's the people in my life who matter the most. I am especially fortunate to have a husband who has stood by me not only through this crisis, but through many other ups and downs that life has brought us over the last 16 years together. So let me conclude with these final thoughts. 2 weeks ago, I told you I was a little stubborn and thick-headed. 2 weeks ago, I finally withdrew from all of my volunteer obligations until further notice in order to get to focus on getting well. I also decided to take medical leave this fall and informed my chair of my decision last week, and he fully supported that. This will give me the summer and the fall to focus on getting healthy and hopefully to finish the few things that I have now left to do on this manuscript. It will also gain me a year back on my tenure clock, the year I lost when I was bedridden on research leave. I can honestly say that since having made these 2 decisions, I already feel better about life in general, even though I'm still struggling with the headaches. I just wish that I had done this a year ago. If you take anything away from my talk today, may it be this. Put yourself first if you ever find yourself in a situation, anything like mine. And I know that that's a very hard thing for most of us to do. As women, we tend to prioritize everyone and everything before ourselves, whether it's friends, family, church, volunteer work, or our jobs. What I have so slowly come to accept, however, is that I can't do everything. This has been a very hard lesson for me to learn. I've also come to understand that no matter how much I love my profession, and I truly, truly love what I do, I feel blessed that I do what I do. I love what I do, and I love getting up in the morning because I enjoy what I do. But at the end of the day, the job will not visit me when I am sick. The job will not spend holidays with me. The job will not comfort me when I am sad, nor will it hold me when I am lonely. So there are times then when I must put my needs first. There are times then when I have to put my needs first. I have no desire to end up as one of the statistics that Dr. Painter informed us about several years ago in a presentation that she made at the Southern Association of Women's Historians. Another woman dead or incapacitated by the age of 40. So dare I say it, in the end, sometimes it is okay to be selfish. Thank you.